will realize how phenomenal Phil is and what a role model he is for us. And then the last half hour, he's going to give us his thing on the importance of meaningful occupation and finding meaningful occupation. So we put together, Phil was just the lead article in a professional journal on adaptive equipment and assistive technology, and we are presenting together in Minneapolis. So we're sort of going to do a dry run on what we're going to talk about. So they're just absolutely perfect. You guys are our guinea pigs. How do you like that? So the plan is to have a casual conversation where I ask questions or you ask questions, but trying to stay on topic of before the injury, right after the injury, and now. So this is really good preparation for you for the movie assignment, because you're looking at what it feels looked like before, what it looked like afterwards, what were his cherished occupations before, and what are his cherished occupations now. So what we put into getting accepted, which you guys will be doing at some point, is this is what happens when a person whose Instagram handle is quad on a bike meets an OT on a trailhead. The stories told will speak to adaptation to injury, transition from rehab to engagement in cherished occupations, and cool adaptations, universal design, and organizations. This is not just a feel-good story, but a model for interacting with clients and families, engaging in cherished occupations, and implementation of universal design to live the life the person chooses to live. Come here, we're salespeople. The life-changing story, the possibilities and efforts to gather the community and redirect societal perceptions from can't and shouldn't to hey, that's cool. So Phil, as OTs, we look at all the areas of occupation. So we look at how we take care of ourselves. So that's our basic ADLs. And then we look at what we call instrumental ADLs, which is finances and driving and paying bills and taking care of pets and that kind of stuff. And then we talk about health management and managing insurance and navigating all of that, and about education and sleep and rest, and leisure activities and play activities and social participation. So I could go through one of those individually. When was your injury?
Man, it's so interesting hearing everything you just said. That sounds like that's been my life work in a nutshell of the last 21 years. So the injury was September 21st. Actually, it's almost been 21 years to the day, almost close. But yeah, all those things you just said are exactly what has been my trajectory. Not in a linear fashion, of course, but those are all very relevant things.
So do you mind telling us what your injury was and how it occurred?
Yeah, so it was September 21st. It was an auto accident, and I was a passenger in my best friend's car, and it was a C5 through C7 spinal cord injury. I broke my neck, so I was initially paralyzed from the neck down. Couldn't move a thing. And I'm sure they told, what year are you guys? First year.
Week
first year.
6?
Week
5.
Ooh, complete babies, huh?
No, and they came to us with good credentials.
Yeah.
All in different things.
Okay.
We're a tough school to get into, so these are smarties. You'd be happy to have them be your OT.
All right.
But we're just learning.
Look at that. She is a salesperson. Yeah. So, yeah, it was.
Were you guys screwing around, or was it just a normal?
Well, I mean, we're 16, right? So by definition, our lives were always screwing around. So, yeah, I mean, it was a rainy day. We were on our way to a party. It was, just kids being kids. It was just one of those days. My friend in the front seat didn't make it. He died on impact. And that would have been me. That was my best friend's car. I sat in that car probably 150 times in the front seat. So that one day, you wouldn't think that being paralyzed would have been the the better draw, but you know, that day it was. So, you know, they always tell you, and you know, I mean, you guys are fairly new, so I don't know how much of this you know, but like the first years, the majority of what you're gonna get back. So you got to work your butt off, and a lot of it has nothing to do with how hard you work. It's just the luck of the draw, how bad the injury is, and how much you're gonna get back. So I was fortunate enough to get back to walking with a cane in that first year. So, and then it's a lifelong thing from that point on, maintaining the strength and keeping the muscles that are still innervated strong enough to keep moving. Otherwise, you atrophy and like get weak. And there's been plenty of setbacks. I've had accidents, shattered legs, almost amputated one of my legs. I've been through so much stuff, but you know what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
So what? Were you in a big city hospital, or where were you?
No, I was Toledo, Ohio. So this is like 45 minutes south from Detroit. That's where I grew up in Ohio. And so it was, you know, I mean, it was the main hospital for Toledo, but.
And did you stay there? Did you go?
Oh yeah, I had a halo, so I have a couple scars on my forehead. I had a halo on the first 3 months. I lived in the hospital the first 3 months. So imagine like Frankenstein, you got 2 screws in here, 2 screws in here, and you literally move like this. And try to sleep with that, work out, and do all kinds of stuff, right, with literally screws in your head. So, yeah, the first 3 months I lived in the hospital and did PT and OT daily. I mean, the first year was literally, I worked out every single day of the week, probably like 4 to 6 hours a day. You know, even when I'm watching TV, I'd be squishing something, you know, to help with my dexterity.
How long did it take you to get the motivation and get to that stage?
Immediately. Because, I mean, like, you're at that point, I mean, look, put it into context. You're a 16-year-old kid. So at that point, your whole life, you know, I was a musician. I played guitar in a band, lead singer, parties, you know, hanging out, high school. Like, that was life, right? Like, it was, so, and then all of a sudden, everything is just flipped upside down. And then now you go from, like, the party life to like, okay, I gotta figure out how to wiggle a toe before I could even think of walking, you know. But the one thing that, and the reason why I got to it so quick was because my network was just so solid. The first day, like I had probably 150 people in the hospital, like just waiting to see me. I had my mother just would never let me think for a second I wouldn't walk again. So, you know, the first thing I would impart to you guys, like as future OTs, is that like when you meet with your patients, you know, what's the network look like, and what's the community around them look like, and because that's everything. Because in the beginning you're broken, and you're a kid, right? I mean, you know, you go as far as like the people and the energy around you at that point.
So before the injury, who did you live with?
Well, it was my mom. You know, I was 16 years old, so I was living with my mom. My parents were separated at the time, but I still to this day have a great relationship with both.
So you took care of all your own self-care. You were no challenges whatsoever.
Yeah, no, yeah.
That. In terms of driving, you got your own driver's license as soon as you could and did all that.
Yep.
Were you a good guy? Were you a bad boy? What were you?
Right.
I know, Phil, I can ask these questions. You would not ask these questions as someone that you did not know this well.
You guys better have some good ones for me by the end of the question time. I like to keep it interesting. I mean, you know,
were you wild and crazy?
Of course, but you know, I was you know, always a good-hearted human being. I would think, you know, you got the good Lord in my heart.
In terms of health management, if your mom dragged you to the doctor, you went to the doctor, you went to the dentist. You know,
I was as healthy as could be, you know, best shape of my life, you know, so.
Did you work out? Was that important to you?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, I mean.
Nah, not so much.
Yeah, not so much, you know.
Well, what about education? What kind of student were you?
It's interesting. I mean, you know, man, I always had a wit about me, so I guess at that point I was a slick student, is the way I would describe it. Slick. So like I would kind of
slither through.
That's a good way of putting it, actually. You know, like I would be kind of like, I went to a private school, like in high school, so you know, it was all boys school, Catholic school, yep, and so you know, I tried to really kind of be really good. I mean, like, I never, I've been in sales my whole life, but I've never read a sales book. It's always been life has been my sales book. The disability and the injuries taught me sales because, you have to learn how to communicate with people and be likable and personable, right?
But you didn't have that back then.
I didn't, right? But I still had the
mentality.
Yeah, the elements of the I'd be cool with all the kids, right? Like the nerdy kids, I wouldn't make fun of them because then what advantage would I have from that? This way, it's like they do my homework for me, and then I could keep playing music and partying. So slick, right? Slithering through like the Slytherin.
You know how to manage your environment.
I did, right? I did, and that was a radical change from after the accident, right? Because after the accident, naturally, I became a philosophy major. Because
we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
Hold
Put a bookmark in.
So we're starting to get an idea of who this guy was like. You talked about your musical stuff. What'd that look like?
That was I always was a creative person, and my mom's an artist. She's a.
So were you a drummer, or what did you?
I played guitar and sang. Yeah, and then even after the injury, I had a little bit of a rap career. So here in Arizona.
Can you rap for us?
Man, it's been like 2 decades, but check it out on Philly Hash Reverb Nation though. So that
is this hard rock or what kind of music?
No, it was rap. I mean, it was
rap.
hip hop.
So it was all rap.
So the reason I went.
I don't even know the difference.
Hard rock and rap. I could see that from him, but no, I mean, it was. So like after the accident, like my dexterity on my right. So my right side's weaker than my left.
We're gonna get there.
Okay. All right.
But you see, I think I'm a fairly experienced interviewer. I'm trying to give you the before and after. And it's hard to do this occupational interview because is it hard to talk about the before stuff?
No, not at all. I mean, 21 years into the game.
Distant.
Well, I mean, it's assimilated, integrated, and like if it hasn't been at this point, I'd probably got bigger problems.
So in terms of leisure and play and social, what were your funnest things to do besides music and party?
That was it.
That was it.
Did you play sports?
I didn't actually. So, well, actually I did, but so freshman year in high school I played football, but my love was basketball. But I kind of was always partying during the football time, so the coaches thought I was like some slacker. So when I went to try out for basketball, I was like on the bubble. I was good enough to make it, but it made it seem like I didn't have those work ethical qualities because Saturday morning practices I'd come less than ready to play. And so that kind of pushed me towards the music party scene more than the jock scene.
So this wasn't a boarding school?
No, it was Catholic school. Yeah, we had
So when I think of Catholic school, I think of very, very strict, high expectations, make the mark or get hit over the head with a ruler. Is any of that accurate?
Zero of that is accurate. It's just a bunch of spoiled rich kids with too much money on their hands because their parents got it to just party. Like that's if you guys could all attest to that.
Wait,
So
can I
that.
ask, what school did you? I went to I don't even know. It's like Grand Rapids Catholic Central. It's in Michigan.
Oh really? St. John's.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jesuit. Yeah.
Common ground here, common
Look at
ground.
that small world, right?
Yeah.
But this is
Crazy.
another example of what I was hearing didn't meet my expectations. So I had to clarify to be able to understand what was really happening. Yeah, Emma.
So the driver in the accident, is he okay and how's your relationship?
Yeah, I get asked that question all the time. He is okay. Nothing happened to him. He had a piece of glass sticking out of his head, and we tried. I think the thing that complicated things was 3 months later, he flipped the car with this other girl and broke her back. So at that point, it's a tough one, right? It's a tough one.
Is he under the influence?
Weed. Yeah. So yeah, but it's been, I haven't talked to him in, a long time. Yeah.
So go ahead.
How long ago did you guys meet?
We think March.
March, yeah.
Before my broken arm, right?
Yeah.
My broken
Yeah,
arm
it was
was
literally a
April
week
1st.
after that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just had one. Do you know what happened to the driver? Like, he get any repercussions for that? Like, what?
No. No.
What did he get? He must have gotten ticketed.
I don't even think he got ticketed because, I mean, we weren't drinking, so like, you know, I don't think, I mean, to be honest, I don't know about that element of it. I don't think anything happened, at least for our accident, so, yeah.
So, any other questions about before? We have a pretty good idea of good relationship with both parents, but both parents were living apart.
Mm-hmm.
So with the injury, you had the injury, you were rushed to the hospital, had the halo, you were in acute rehab for 3 months?
Yeah, and then outpatient after that. I mean, I've been in some form of rehab, even now. I mean, I'm not in a formal rehab, but tried not working out like this last month, right? Like going to, well, I should know better now. I shouldn't get into the Europe stuff yet, but like briefly speaking, not working out for the last almost month, like you feel it, like those muscles, because look at it this way, like let's say you had 10 muscles going to a thigh, now you only have 5, right? So those 5 have to do twice or whatever, you know, multiple X the work of what, you know, your regular nerves and muscles did before. So, you know, they're gonna get weaker quicker without use. So, you know, that compounds, all that stuff compounds, plus age, all that other stuff, like, you know, we all get weaker with age. When you're not staying on top of it, you feel it real hard. So even now I still work out like 4 or 5 days a week.
So at that point, you were in the hospital for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Then you went home. And then how often did you go to therapy?
Oh, it was 7 days a week, like 4 to 6 hours a day.
So your
like,
mom had to drive you?
Yeah, I was doing therapy and then working with a trainer. I mean, I even went to Russia because, you know, like they go hard. And like lived in Russia for like, in Moscow for like 3 or 4 months. Just
To get therapy.
Hardcore therapy, like
And
intense therapy, yeah.
Who went with you?
Myself.
So neither of your parents went with you?
No.
So you were, how motivated would we say, do we think Phil is? Get in your brain. Were you wildly motivated to get your life?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an extremist, so that means like I don't,
No.
I don't, you know, go half in. You know, if I'm doing it, I'm doing it. So.
Were you an extremist before?
Yeah.
So what was the grieving process for you? And
The
this
grieving process?
Yeah, I mean, look what happened. You were a total able-bodied person. You happened to sit in the back seat instead of the front seat, so you survived, if we believe in that. And in 2 seconds, your life totally changed.
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know, there wasn't much of a grieving process because there was no time to just sit and feel sorry for yourself, because every day was a day that, like, especially in the beginning, like, you have to get on it immediately, because that first year, like, the clock is ticking. 365 days, then 364, then 363. Imagine if you spend half of it moping around. You can't. You just can't. And so, like, all these things, like, talk about, like, you know, like, pressure, you know, either bursts pipes or makes diamonds. And, like, if you want, like, we all talk about all these, like, strengths and qualities we want for ourselves as human beings in life. You know, patience, inner strength, you know, like, resolve, persistence, all these things. They're not just handed to us, right? You got to earn them, and you earn them in the flames. And so, like, who I am now and what I'm able to do, and, you know, like, I've gone from, you know, I literally can do anything. I know I can. I've been there. I've faced death multiple times. Like, you know, I was in another major car accident in the mountains. I almost died in the woods a couple years ago. We'll get into, you know, of how I discovered my bike and my passion now. You know, just like constant stuff, picking myself up, you know, performing, you know, within the hip hop community, teaching myself investing and trading and stocks and sales and all these different things all came directly because of what I went through and the qualities that I've developed facing adversity. That you just can't get any other way. You know, like, you got to face your fears. You got to face the difficult thing, because that's where you develop the skills it takes to overcome. and to adapt.
Did spirituality or religion play a role in any of this?
Everything, yeah, that's my foundation. You know, I didn't have much of a relationship with God because you're a 16-year-old kid. You don't, you know, what do you need God for, right? You need girls and music and you know that stuff. So, but like when you're facing the music, so to speak, you know, and then life really, you know, you have a reality check. That's why I went into philosophy, because the natural questions of why and what do I do now? Why did this happen to me? And all these different things. So I went down that path in multiple rabbit holes and into atheism and all the other stuffs before. I had some great therapists, some really great therapists,
So
yeah.
He didn't tell us what he did in therapy. He had great therapists. And
Exactly.
we talk about that relationship is so important. What was the greatness, do you think?
The connection, like the genuine connection, like the like just the human qualities of just like being around someone that you like being around, and they're your biggest cheerleader, they're your you know support, they just the human qualities of like connecting with someone that you know is there to support you and that wants to see you succeed. And you know, at that point you're vulnerable, right? So you want someone to trust and you want someone to connect with on a genuine level. And that's why, like you said, you know, I don't remember what I did in therapy, but I remember the people and how they made me feel.
With any of them?
What's that?
Are you in contact with them?
No, not now, you know, because it's been so long and I'm in a different state, but
So now I'm jumping ahead. When you said I'm a quad and I said I'm an OT, what did you equate with that OT-ness? Besides, who's this crazy lady that wants to pick me up in this parking lot?
I mean, you know, I mean, obviously the emotional connection back to what I just said about my OTs back then and how fond I was about the people that were there for me in the beginning. And then just because of where I was and what I was trying to do at that point, like, you know, I was like literally right in the first month of like me pursuing my new passion in life and riding and being a part of the community and wanting to like give back. Because it's like, you know, who I am now versus, you know, I kind of gave you that like funny background of me and like kind of the party mindset. Like I guess I couldn't be much more. I still have those qualities of like, you know, just the openness and just the looseness, but like in terms of who I am now versus then, pretty different. And that's because of what I went through. And you know, when you learn the things you learn going through everything you went through something like this, you know, you get to a point where you want to start to impart this to like your community and help others, because you've kind of went down those paths, you've walked down them, you know how to deal with different struggles, and you know, connecting with people is the essence of life, I believe, you know, genuine connections. So if there's a way to help somebody go through something that I've been through, that's kind of the phase where I'm at right now. So meeting you, I was like, well, like, you know, talking to people like yourselves that are going to be out there and speaking to freshly injured people is huge, right? Because then you guys could get a little glimpse of what it was like to kind of go through that, and then you could have the empathy that it would take to really genuinely connect with someone and have that meaningful relationship like I did with my OT.
So before I rudely interrupted you, can you talk a little bit about what you feel in your body, what body parts you're aware of, and where your strength is limited?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I'm very fortunate because my scenario, I'm in a situation where, you know, most people that have either quad or paraplegia, usually, you know, some of them are incomplete, a lot of them are complete. It's very different in terms of sensation. A lot of people don't have any sensation. They can't feel from the injury site down. I can. I'm kind of in a unique situation that, you know, I'm a wheelchair user, but I still walk most of the time, you know, throughout the day, you know, with my
2 crutches.
Yeah, with my canes, yeah, you know, my white walkers. You guys see Game of Thrones ever?
Yeah.
Got 2 white canes. It's pretty. But yeah, I mean, it's I'm very fortunate, right? So I mean, that sensation's compromised. It's not like normal,
Is it painful at all?
No, I'm really lucky to not have.
'Cause some people.
Yeah, I mean, I have neuropathy and things, you know, I'm sure you guys probably heard of that. Like, you know, it's kind of like a nerve pain, like kind of like a burning sensation, almost like a icy hot.
And where's that?
Kind of mostly in my legs, but
Uh-huh.
I was able, like early on, I was on like a bunch of pills, but now I'm not on anything because I was like, I'm a big, you know, mind over matter person. Like prayer, meditation, positive thinking is huge. Huge, right? I mean, like, you know, I was a cynical person, like very pessimistic the first probably decade after my injury. It wasn't until about 2013 that I had like a big renaissance where I just kind of hit rock bottom and decided just like, all right, enough's enough. I got to go into a different trajectory of my life. 6 months during that rock bottom, like I had to literally force myself to think positive thoughts. I believe in neuroplasticity. You guys ever hear that?
Yeah.
Right? So it's a really powerful concept. That's a reality. I mean, like the brain is plastic, and when you exercise certain neural pathways, you can get the brain to rewire signals. And I've experienced it myself, like even with the thinking. So that was a huge change for me, and that's helped me with things like not being on a lot of medications. That like, you know, like I've been able to control mentally these nerve pains. My spasticity, even stuff like that. I don't have to take baclofen or, you know, gabapentin or these drugs that have tons of side effects, make you a zombie. You know, if the less you're on that stuff, the better. So I'm really lucky.
So, like, when you walk, it's probably a very swing-through gait.
Mm-hmm.
You're not stepping individually on your feet, or are you?
Well, what do you mean individual? I mean, I walk like, you know, like it's. I mean, it's not a normal gait, but.
So I walk like this, but if I were using canes or crutches, I probably would plant them and then swing both legs. So what I'm trying to get is, do you have the power in your hips to move your legs independently?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the right leg is weaker than the left. It's kind of more of like a stroke situation. My whole right side's weaker than my left. So like on my left side, I have good dexterity. On my right, not so much. Same thing with the right leg.
Were you initially right-handed?
Yeah. So and now I'm kind of ambidextrous, which that's cool. But yeah. So you know, you just find a way. You adapt. I mean, that's like I mean, I got this shirt on right here. It says adaptive, and that word to me, it's a really powerful word because I think the word disability is something that happens to us. I mean, the fact that that's like the politically correct word is kind of very odd to me because, I mean, even just the etymology of it, like disabled, like you're not able, like it's kind of like, okay, like really that's the best we could do in our community? Like it's, you know, and I think it's something that happens to us, but and there's a stigma around it, right? Of like, what you can't do or the things that you've lost versus adaptive is the kind of flip side of that. Like even just the word adaptive, like you're adapting, like you are persevering, you're finding a way to overcome and to do the things that you need to do to be able to live a meaningful and fruitful life and to achieve all the things you need to do to, you know, live life as fully as possible. So, and that's a mindset. And I just got back from Europe, if you'll allow me to share briefly on that.
Who am I to say?
But like, Europe is interesting because people with disabilities, like you get to the front of the lines on different things. I get to cut in and see the Mona Lisa, the Eiffel Tower, like all these different things. Like they're really like on it. Like, you know, it's pretty accessible too. There's a ton of like abilities to get like whatever wheelchairs, medical equipment. Yes, Froma.
Were you traveling with someone in a chair?
No, I wasn't, but I was there with people in chairs, like in most of the cities I knew. I had people everywhere, which was great. But and one of our tour guides in Lyon, which is actually one of the most accessible cities in Europe, in France, he was a wheelchair user, and he kind of took us all around there. Like it's incredibly accessible. Like you go up to a bus, you press a button, like the ramp comes down. Like the metros, the subways, they all had like accessibility, streets, you know. But the one thing that's lacking out there that we are way ahead of the whole world is the adaptive mindset. So people in Europe, like they have the abilities to like, you know, be taken care of, life to be made easier and accessible enough, but the mindset's really lacking there. Even like within the disability community, like people are just like, well, you know what, that's kind of too dangerous as far as sports, or like, you know, maybe they might not want to jump in, versus out here, you know, I don't know if we're going to show any videos like with the bike, but I mean, like we go at it, right? And adaptive sports is a huge part of community, first of all, and then physically getting yourself into shape, you know, like the camaraderie, the skill sets, and then all of that imparts to you a mindset, a different mindset, like of what you can do and pushing the limits versus kind of recoiling back into the stigma of what disability is. So for me, the word adaptive is important because it represents community, it represents a movement, and most importantly, a mindset. You know, the adaptive sports brought that into the forefront, but it could start out with as little as someone that's freshly injured that could barely hold a toothbrush that just has the will to start trying to do that, to brush their teeth. Doesn't need to be someone like, you know, sending it off a mountain.
So culturally, your impression of Europe was that they created an environment that was universal design, which would mean that it was accessible to people who were not walking. But the expectation of people who would be in chairs was that they would change the environment, but the people would not change. But in the United States, you see a better mindset of expectation.
Yeah, and I mean, even just like if you want to look at the conditions around that as well, I mean, accessibility-wise, we're ahead of the world as well, but you know, the nonprofit organizations, the grant programs, you have to get the medical equipment, right? Like, even though they'll provide you with a chair and like a hand cycle there, I mean, it's not going to be like a Lash or a $20,000 bike, or like there's no grant programs for that. There's no nonprofit organizations, you know, to the level that we have, if at all, that facilitate the events, the races, the sports. I mean, one of the races that I'm going to be taking part in this weekend up in Pine Top, you know, we've been working with one of the biggest organizers in Arizona for mountain biking, like to add adaptive chapters to these races so that we could have a bunch of us on adaptive bikes participating and racing against other people and like going out and getting it. And it's like, you know, one of the things I got invited in France to do was to be a part of one such event too, where they're just beginning to start to add like adaptive chapters to races there as well. And like the sport is really in its infancy, and it's really cool to start to see that, and that's why I wanted to make the trip out of that, because of that event, because it's so important over there, you know, because the mindset's so different.
So one of the things we look at, and we talk about it a lot as OTs, is cherished occupations, the stuff that you can't wait to do. And it sounds like mountain biking is one of those things that you can't wait to do. Did that develop after the injury?
Yeah, as recently as like a year and a half ago. You know, it wasn't something that I did before my injury.
Is there anything like it that you did? I mean, when I see your mountain biking, I see risk-taking, adventure, sense of community, motor planning, speed, adventure, being outside. Is that pretty much the meaning from your mountain biking, or am I missing something?
Yeah, I mean, it like those qualities are so monumental, like, because it's like, you know, when you become disabled, there's, you know, you're initially limited, you know, in terms of like your mind goes to like the things you've lost, and a lot of the things you just mentioned are huge, like give backs, like things that you get back, like being able to ride this like adventurous machine like on these rugged trails and like go out with friends and like get exercise and travel and adventure and like, you know, like do crazy stuff that like, you know, people in the right mind wouldn't even think of doing.
So did you do anything comparable to that? It didn't have to be called mountain biking, but the wild and crazy stuff that other people didn't do. Did you do that when you were 15 in any way?
Not in the sport context.
Did you do it in music? Did you do it in?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was it was a different life, Roma. You know, like it was, you know, we already kind of covered it, right? The party lifestyle and the music and like that element. So I mean, there was excitement and stuff, but it wasn't like an active life.
So it's almost like when something was taken away that gave him power and independence, he grabbed onto this to make it happen. Do you all have a phone with you? So can anybody go on to Instagram? So I think that whoever can go on to Instagram, you should pull up Phil quad on a bike, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a little break and go in Instagram to quad on a bike. And those of you that don't have a phone, sort of buddy up with someone that does or isn't onto Instagram. I want you to get a feel for what this looks like for Phil. I don't know if there was a post today that I saw, but there certainly was one the last couple days.
Yeah, there was. Yeah, I mean, the first things that are
Did anyone
pinned.
just say, "Oh no"?
Wow.
Oh
How
wow.
fast can it go?
I mean, it'll go like 20, 30 miles an hour, but I mean, on the trails, it's more about like
Yeah.
technical
Yes.
stuff than so much speed. But check out the one with the bridge. I think it's the one in the middle.
Whiplash on your neck.
Oh yeah, that's a good sense.
Yeah,
But
how do you like stabilize your neck? Like my neck would just.
well, it's a full suspension bike,
Oh my goodness.
which is incredible. You know, like it's like
Have you ever flipped?
oh yeah, all the time.
What do you do?
I mean, not all the time. I mean, but like, I mean, that's what makes it fun is there's consequences. So
So I assume you're always with friends.
yeah,
When you go.
yeah. What I'm doing the crazy stuff
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you're going turtle on that thing by yourself, it's not fun.
Going turtle on that?
Yeah,
big
like
bike?
you flipping upside down
Oh.
or something like that. Yeah. You pedal with your arms, yeah. So it's an e-assisted bike. So that means you could set the settings to like however much it's gonna help you. There's also a throttle. So like when you're going uphill or like when you're doing like some crazy leans, like in some of the videos you'll see me like leaning really hard one way because like you're going off camber, stuff like that that's like slanted, and if you're not leaning into it, it'll just flip you, right? So you're not really cranking then, you're throttling and kind of like leaning your body. So I mean you have to be in great shape, like like 21 years in to like find reasons to keep working out become tough. This is a reason, right? Because now I could go out with friends, I could go travel, I could do all this stuff. I've been living out my Jeep a lot when I'm traveling. So like that is hard, right, for anyone. But I mean, if you have a disability, that's even harder. So it's like all these things like built up on one another of like, okay, I got to stay in great shape to do this, right? I got to have the technology to do it. I have to have a lift to transport this thing. One of the videos on there was like this lift that we designed with a robot for me to be able to go and take this thing on and off the Jeep myself. Because I'm really like, I want to be able to be fully independent where if like, I just want to go and head to Moab, Utah to shred with my friends over there. You know, I just got done off-roading on the Rubicon. I put my lift on, I put the bike on there, and I just head out by myself. Like, live out the Jeep, ride the bike, you know, put the lift down over there, go do some rock crawling. Like all this stuff, I didn't do any of this stuff before the accident, right? I'm actually more active now than, you know, before the accident where I was just doing the party thing, right?
Part of that's probably the age and the expectation of the age. So we've heard an ideal that Phil drives by himself. We have heard a lot of his leisure. Some of it's probably play because he's defined the rules of what should be done. We've heard a lot about social participation. We know that he traveled to Europe, so if you start to do a task analysis of what it involves to travel to Europe and navigate hotels, that's giving us a whole lot of information. What's your living situation now?
I got
Don't
my-
get too personal, but you know.
No, nothing super personal, but I got my own house, you know, I live on my own. Everything is all about that adaptive mindset and making it reality, whatever I need to do. I mean, if there's a will, there's a way. That's why I knew I needed to, you know, have a good job, good occupation, you know, learning sales and like investing and everything like that came from knowing that, you know, insurance isn't going to cover a lot of this stuff, even if you have good insurance, because a lot of it's recreational. So you had to find a different way.
So in terms of meal prep, dressing, eating, bathing, showering, personal hygiene, or any of those things a challenge?
I mean, a challenge, sure, but I mean, it's all things that I find a way to do. I mean, I do all those things, yeah.
Do you cook?
I mean, I'm a good cook, but I mean, like, do I want to, I'm a big foodie. So my pops, like, so I'm like half Lebanese, and so like, you guys ever have like shawarma or Mediterranean food? Super bomb, right? So it's like, so I have got that background. I know how to cook and all that, but it's so time consuming. So, like, there's only so many hours in a day. So if you're spending the whole day cleaning your house, doing laundry, cooking, and doing all these things, like, I would rather like delegate certain things out to maximize my time because I only have so much energy. Like, even if I didn't have a disability, so.
So do you think that you require more sleep?
I mean, you sleep when you're dead. But
That's a Mauryism too, you guys that look at Tuesdays as Maury. So there's some stuff that you choose not to do or you choose to hire out. Do you ever ask people to take care of your physical needs?
Like what?
Like transferring you or doing any of those things?
Well, I mean, all the physical, I mean, I do everything on my own, right? So there's not any like help physically.
Does your house have any adaptations? Do you have a ramp going in?
I think I have a ramp going in because initially when I shattered my leg, this was back in 2013, I needed that and I just kept it, but it's not anything that, like, I don't use the chair around the house.
Do you ever get in the house from the chair?
Not really, no, I'll walk because I mean, like, most of the, like, I took the chair today because it's a far walk from the parking lot, but like if it's just like the house, church, restaurants, I'll walk. So, I'll try to walk as often as I can because that's exercise in and of itself and keeping strong.
So is your shower adapted?
Mm-mm.
Kitchen adapted? Low cabinets or anything?
I got like 10 Alexas in the house. So, so the lights, the AC.
I heard you say 10 Lexuses and it was like, oh no.
Yeah. But it's like a polygamous relationship. They're always getting angry. I ask one and then they all get ticked off and start yelling at me. But
So let's talk about your education.
yeah.
This happened when you were 16. Then
Yeah.
what happened with education?
Well, the philosophy was, so the first year it was interesting because I somehow managed to still graduate with my senior class because this happened in junior year. So my mom got me a homeschool teacher for the remainder of the junior year, and then I was able to actually go back and finish and graduate with my class in physical school senior year. So that was important to me,
Were
right?
you still slick or were you a more academic person?
I mean, that was like senior year, so you're but like college is when I really began to, because once you start to study the philosophy and then like you get deeper, like philosophy was really cool because even though I went into sales, like I originally wanted to be an attorney, but then I was like, man, do I really want to be working like 80 hours a week, pushing paperwork for this one dude that's going to be sitting on a yacht sipping mojitos and I'm doing all the work. I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, if you're really good at sales, there's no better job to make money in. Trust me. Like, it's crazy good. But, like, it's interesting because now, like, I don't want to do any of that stuff because the older you get, the less it becomes about making money, even though money's important to do all the cool stuff that we've been talking about. It becomes more about trying to do something that's more meaningful and fulfilling and helping others and connecting with community. So now, even though like all this stuff that I'm doing now, working with a lot of nonprofits, categorizing trails, creating adaptive chapters, the adaptive bike club, all this stuff I'm doing right now isn't lucrative. You're not doing it for the money. You're doing it for the love of it and for the community. But I'm more fulfilled than I've ever been, making ridiculous money in sales or stocks.
So did you finish school?
Yeah. So I mean, I did like the philosophy, I guess to finish that thought, the philosophy helps you to think critically. And when you could think critically, then you could teach yourself like anything because you start to look at the world differently. So that really changed my approach to life, you know, in a very useful way that, you know, put me on the trajectory I'm on right now.
So we know that you came up with a family that valued education and enough to put you in a Catholic school that you said was for the rich kids. And now you've gone almost a reverse to saying that there's more meaning than that. Is that part of the philosophy, or is that part of your own trajectory of learning and changing?
A little bit of both. I mean, like, it's like, you know, you live life and then you kind of see where things go. And, you know, like when you've been doing something and, like, you know, you go into a career that's oriented around, you know, status and money and things like sales, like, you know, you achieve all these things and they're great. But then what? Like, you just make more money, you become better at sales, like you become a VP, like, you know, like it's like.
Did you work for an organization?
Yeah, I worked for a few, you know, and it just, I don't know, it's limiting. Like, it wasn't as fulfilling. I was like, you get to a point where you're like, okay, so I made a bunch of money this year. Like, I was actually like less satisfied when I was as successful as I ever was than not. It was quite paradoxical. And that really forced me, that was about a year ago, and that really forced me to be like, what am I trying to get out of this? And that's kind of where the biking really took off. It was this kind of shift in direction. Like, the sales kind of fell back. You know, I was able to take some time off to really focus on what I love, and then I'll see where the money goes. You know, I still have the investing, so I could still do that on the side, and that's what allows me to still travel and stuff and do that on my mobile phone. So, but it's not going to be the thing that, like, does it for me.
So what questions do you guys have? Jeff?
Did you have any, like, expectations that you had to exceed because due to your injury? Like, did you ever have to, like, you know, change?
Doctors were telling you, because really no one really knows. Like, you know, the doctors initially will, like, you know, they don't want to say too much because they don't want to put their neck on the line, you know. So no one really knew, but I mean, with the severity of the injury I had, like, they didn't expect me to walk. So, you know, you kind of have to almost, like, that's why, like, my mom early on, and, like, the fact that I was a young kid, I didn't know any better. My mom was telling me, like, you're gonna walk. Like, that was as simple as just believing that and then not overthinking all the rest of the stuff. Because otherwise it's really easy to fall down into this, like, you know, spiral of, like, hopelessness or, like, what you can't do. So you gotta, like, that's why having a good network of people around you that, you know, support you and reorient your thought process to, like, look, we're gonna work right now, and by the grace of God, what happens is what happens. But what I can control, I will do and control, which is my effort. And that's why I was working out constantly and just focused on what I'm gonna do rather than what people said I could or can't do.
Do you think you got more mature when that happened? I feel like you took, like, a lot of big risks, like saying, you know, I can do this, where I'm, like, as a 16-year-old, you have different values and different, like, goals, and then those shifted dramatically, but it seemed like you were very calm. So do you think you, like, kind of woke up and was, like, almost more mature than an average 16-year-old would be?
You had to be, yeah. I mean, because life is shifted so quick. So when everyone's focus was, you know, what my previous focus was, you know, before, like, on a drop of a dime, like, overnight, you had to shift. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, the maturity had to go up for sure. My focus, my priorities, and then, you know, naturally the people that I was hanging out with had to shift too. Yeah.
Questions from the back?
Did you? I definitely just lost my question. Did you have any, like, major difficulties? Like, what was, like, your biggest difficulty when you were, like, going through, like, this recovery process? Like, I know that walking was, like, one of the biggest ones, but, like, what was, like, the other one? Was it just, like, the idea, or what was the biggest
Probably the mental and
If the students went out and saw how you manage your chair in the car,
Yeah.
a lot of them, that would be a very different thing. And then come back in and wrap up. So can you talk about the adaptive sports opportunities and what you're involved with there?
Yeah, so
Is it called Northern Arizona Adapted Sports?
Yeah, so the organization that that I work with pretty closely, they're called High Country Adaptive Sports up in Flagstaff. There's two really great organizations. There's Ability 360 here in Phoenix, and High Country up in Flag. And I'm one of the mountain biking instructors out there for adaptive mountain biking. And every week, you know, we go out and get people on these bikes, like the bike that I have. And people for the first time that have never encountered these bikes that, you know, and the reason I want to do that is because I know exactly the type of joy it could bring to people and the world of opportunities that it could open up. So like that's been my major involvement, and we've been doing events. We're doing races now. That guy in the top left over there is my good friend Max, who I actually just visited in Europe. He's kind of the face of Lasher, one of the best riders in the world. He's the one that.
Is that you next to?
Yeah, it's me next to him. That was at the Lasher event, and you know it's just been game changing. And these organizations are just so awesome, right? They just facilitate riding events. You know, we're getting races together now. We are working to get rules for racing put together for how adaptive riders will compete against not only one of them, you know, ourselves, but against uprights as well. And, you know, they do all kinds of stuff, winter programs as well. I'm going to be doing skiing for the first time
You see the skiing on
this
it?
year.
So
So,
rock
crawling,
climbing.
I mean-
Is it Ability 360 where we're visiting in a couple of weeks?
Yep, and the great thing about where we're at right now, that's my buddy Truman right there in the green. He's an awesome human being, and he's one of the outdoor directors for all the sports programs. And the beauty of 2022 right now is that like any sport you could think of could become adaptive, like golf, tennis, skiing, rock crawling. I mean, like things that you could just never think of. So literally, if there's a will, there's a way, you know, and that's why changing the mindset from, you know, a disability mindset to adaptive mindset is the key to being able to unlock this whole world of opportunities that we have.
Well, that sort of just said it all, huh? You're gonna go back to sales or?
Only in some more fruitful context. So
Does Lasher pay you?
no. I mean, they're just a company I'm really grateful for, and their bike changed my life. So, but no.
So, what's the takeaway message for us?
Kind of the last thing I just said, you know, changing the mindset. You know, from a disability mindset to an adaptive mindset. You know, we live in a time where there's literally no limitations. The only limitations are the ones that we impart on ourselves. So,
Wow.
you change that, you have a full, meaningful life. Disabled, able-bodied, doesn't matter. That goes for all of us.
I don't know that I can possibly thank you enough. I think that this is, for this time in your first quarter, this was just such a emotional, if he can do it, I can do it kind of experience.